This is White Plains Week, the weekly roundup of White Plains, Westchester, and world news. With John Bailey, editor and publisher of the daily internet newspaper White Plains Citizen Net Reporter, WPCNR.com. Jim Benerofe, editor and publisher of SuburbanStreet.com and WhitePlains.com. And me, Peter Katz, formerly with NBC, ABC News, and stations from Boston to Los Angeles. White Plains Week, what's happening? Who are the newsmakers? What's in store for the future? The views and opinions expressed on this program are solely those of the participants. White Plains Week is presented on Optimum Cable Channel 76, Verizon Fios Channel 45, and on the internet at whiteplainsweek.com, youtube.com, and wpcommunitymedia.org. Now, White Plains Week.
Good evening, Mr. and Mrs. White Plains, Westchester, and the world, and the voices of freedom out there. Speak up. John Bailey, the Citizen Net reporter, with Peter Katz, the anchor for all seasons, and Jim Benerofe, the Dean of Journalism in the city of White Plains. And without further ado, the headlines, please.
And here are the stories of the week of February 10th, 2017. 11 inches of snow fall on White Plains and Westchester over 11 hours. Common Council approves Dannon renovation of Morton's Steakhouse space to create food lab at the former Fortunoff site. Common Council approves 77 apartments at 1 Dekalb Avenue. Civil service employees contract approved for 3 years. Firemen next to put the pressure on for a new contract. Council refers out for review the Mount Hope AME Zion Church Senior Apartments project and the 440 Hamilton Avenue transition to rental apartments. City sends home rule request to legislature for a city industrial development agency. Peter Katz will deliver his weekly feature, Trump, the President. The White Plains Historical Society will open Jacob Purdy House to celebrate the birth of George Washington on February 27th with a talk of the story relationship between Thomas Paine and George Washington. It's a 1 to 3 p.m. Sunday, the 27th, and it's free.
Yes, that's the 26th, my mistake.
Okay.
26th. But, you know, that's what I like. I like free stuff, don't you?
Yes.
Yes, and patriotism, which is out of fashion. Be that as it may.
Well, wasn't George Washington the president who said he couldn't tell a lie?
Yes, but he also, felt that it was important that no one serve, more than 2 terms.
And wasn't it George Washington?
Or be king. He said he didn't want to be king.
George Washington also said he couldn't tell fake news. Didn't he say that too?
Couldn't tell a lie, I think.
It was a lie, not fake news. Oh, sorry.
Right.
Okay.
Boy, that has changed, that philosophy. But let's go to the Rolo News Reel March of Time, and there you have it, friends. One of the reasons why, one of the drawbacks of living in the Northeast. Snow, and it came Willa Wallop yesterday, Thursday, and it came out to be about 11 inches. Let's take a look at the next slide. There you go. That's the way it was at White Plains Citizen Net
Now that's
Reporter
the official White Plains Citizen Net Reporter snow measuring device.
That's right. Just about 10 and a half, but this was done at 3 o'clock yesterday afternoon.
Actually, if you looked at the table on our deck, it looked more like 14 inches where we are, but
it's an optical illusion.
But that often happens where the WPCNR News headquarters records less of a snow accumulation than I record, especially when I'm shoveling the driveway.
Did you use a yardstick?
No, I didn't. I used a scientific instrument.
What was that?
My foot.
But anyway, everybody knows that snow is rough, but the White Plains High School this morning had a 2-hour delay, creating an enormous
The schools
traffic
were closed
jam.
all over the place. We were lucky. Even we got 11 inches or 14 inches depending on where. Long Island got clobbered. Up in Boston, they were expecting 18 inches from this storm. It was really a classic nor'easter.
And it came so fast.
The thing is, which is the more incredible story, is that we went from 66 degrees on Wednesday to the 30s and 11 to 14 inches of snow on Thursday. Incredible. Just an incredible
Criminy.
change of weather.
Criminy.
Now,
Yes.
some will say that cold weather like this proves that there's no such thing as global warming. On the other hand, storms such as we saw yesterday are a direct effect of global warming, because what global warming does, it pumps more energy into the atmosphere. It allows the creation of more severe storm systems. It allows more dramatic changes in weather. So when you see us going from 66 degrees to snowstorm to where we are today in the 20s,
A very fast snowstorm.
that's a
An inch an
reflection.
hour.
It's a reflection of global warming.
But the last couple of hours were kind of light, but you still had to reshovel.
Well, the president says there's no such thing as global warming.
Yes.
So that's what we accept.
Yeah, and he says
There's no global warming.
There's no such thing as news you can believe either.
But the snowstorm did have one very positive effect, because I had an epiphany while I was out there shoveling the snow, and I figured out a way to save the American taxpayers $12 billion. And it's very simple. All Donald Trump has to do is call up the White Plains Department of Public Works and convince them that the Mexican-U.S. border is really his driveway. And DPW will send the plows over and plow the snow in the driveway the way they usually do.
The DPW of White Plains, New York, USA is the SWAT team of snow removal. There is none better. They're out there. You can get out of your driveway in the morning. You can get out. Of course, you have to shovel away what they dump in it, but that's just something else. But now it's some news that is not fake. The Common Council approved the Dannon renovation of Morton's Steakhouse space and to create the food lab, and that was.
I believe they're also taking the vacant top floor of that
expanding
building.
that a little bit.
And the significant part here is they've taken retail space and really approved changing it to office use, changing it to food lab use. At Morton's, retail, restaurant, storefront, and really it amounts to Dannon's headquarters moving into White Plains, which is in a way a coup for White Plains to get a national, well-known product.
And just a tip to all you people looking for office space and whatever space you want out there, White Plains will adjust their zoning to fit your needs. Wouldn't you say? Definitely would, right.
Well, it's a coup. It brings a couple of hundred jobs to the city. And furthermore, it fills vacant space. Now, that space down there has been vacant for quite some time, ever since Fortunoff had its upheaval.
Absolutely. Now, in another example of a positive development for White Plains, and they approved the 77 apartments at 1 Dekalb Avenue. This is the site right on the corner there of, that's Maple Avenue and Dekalb, and they're going to build this, next slide, right there. And 77 units, 16 affordable, and this is a project that has been on the boards for a long time, and we're finally getting around to approving it now that the economy has turned up.
And you know what really stands out about that project?
What?
The number of affordable units is just above 20%, which is approximately double what the city usually requires of a developer in putting in affordable units.
Well, it is more apartments for more people. And as we pointed out last week, Jim, we're looking at 3,700 apartments, and we haven't even thought of
That's a total
the great
development.
club, yeah.
You guys
Yeah.
had done a compilation of everything that's on the boards.
Now, the only problem with that is will these people have children?
Typically, the developers will say no, there'll be minimal to no impact on the school system, but you never know.
Say if you have
Well, it depends
20
on the size of the apartments. If you have a one-bedroom apartment, well, they can get away with a baby in that situation. But when the baby gets older, they're going to want more space,
Now,
so they will probably move.
now you can't determine how many apartments you should have in a city based on whether or not it will eventually affect the school district. But let's see, 3,700 apartments. Say 10% to 20% have children. That's about 2,000 new children
Well,
in
in
the school
theory,
district.
I mean, it is speculation. The other thing that you have to keep in mind, who will the apartments be marketed to? And the thrust of what we've been hearing from City Hall and the developers is that they are looking to market to millennials. They're looking to reverse commuters, to bring people who can't afford Manhattan any longer up here.
Yeah.
We have the Metro North train station. It's convenient. If you hit it right, it's 35 minutes and you're in Grand Central. So it's a very convenient commute. In fact, it's almost as convenient for some people as living in parts of New York City itself and having to take the subway into work in Manhattan.
True.
And then again,
And you actually get a seat on the Metro North.
and you have the benefits, of a suburban, low-stress environment, comparatively low
Yes.
stress.
White Plains Week is brought to you in part by the City of White Plains Planning Department. Thank you, Peter, for those words. Right. Jim, the civil service employees contract was approved for 3 years, as we had told you a couple of weeks ago, and the firemen are now going to address the Council of Neighborhood Associations next week on the problems that they have with staffing and all that, and they want, I believe, to catch up with the police. As far as wages
I think every fire department wants to have more firemen
Yes.
on duty, and they want to have better facilities. They want to have newer trucks, and there's some merit to an argument like that, because the job of the fire department, after all, is to prepare for the times when they might be needed. And we all hope they never will be needed, but sometimes you just need
Trucks
this.
may be getting
you
old.
need the response availability.
Well,
There are costs, though.
well, another thing that's beneficial of that, though, is that you get a reservoir of skilled or trained people to handle things like fire trucks, and that's good to have. It's
Absolutely, and we will see how the city works this out, because once again, they're going to have to negotiate all the contracts again a year from July, which is not that far away.
It's an ongoing thing, and I can't tell you, how many times the stories on this program about contract negotiations have all been the same.
Yes.
Unions want a raise.
Right.
They want to change work rules. The city says no, and we go back and forth, and sometimes it goes to arbitration. Sometimes they just agree on something.
The
So-
council also referred out for review what we told you about last week, the Mount Hope AME Zion Church Senior Apartments project and the 440 Hamilton Avenue transition to rental apartments.
Well, that's the old
developments.
AT&T building. It had
Yeah.
been a switching center. I mean, there were all kinds of telephone traffic went through there, international traffic. In fact, if you look carefully throughout Westchester, you can see certain secure phone lines where the lines are protected because they carry what's called secure traffic. I won't try to define what secure traffic is.
Otherwise, it wouldn't be secure, would it?
But that's
Yes,
correct.
right.
Somehow government secrets come to mind.
Absolutely.
But anyway, so this was a massive switching center, right. A lot of equipment on the inside, and as a result of that, part of the reason it doesn't have any windows is that it had to be temperature controlled, so that the equipment is protected from extremes of temperature.
Now we're just getting a tremendous modern look to it. Which
now the thing is that Mayor Roach has long used that facility as a bit of a whipping boy to describe what he believes is wrong with some of the downtown streets, and that they're not friendly to pedestrians and they're not attractive. You look at slabs of stone instead of windows and displays and other warm residential things.
Right, and everything is real gray.
So in terms of fulfilling a desire of the current mayor of the city, this goes a long way toward doing that. It takes this rather sterile structure and turns it into a pleasing, pedestrian-friendly, residential-friendly building.
Right. Now, Jim, the city is sending a home rule request to the legislature for a city industrial development agency. We'll see if the legislature goes along with that. But what does a IDA do?
Well, the IDA they use when a developer comes in with some big project which is bringing a lot of employees. They provide financing for that, and I think they get certain tax breaks and so on. Right now, I mean, we've tried this before, and it's been unsuccessful every time. I don't know whether this time will be different.
Well, since Mr. Cuomo sees Mr. Astorino as a threat, he may change his mind.
Hard to say. It has been tried before. In some cases, it was opposed as being too political. In some ways, the IDA, where a mayor typically can make appointments to the to serve on the IDA, becomes a political body. It wields considerable economic power, and it can decide which developments are going to succeed and which ones are not going to succeed, just by virtue of its ability to float bonds,
but virtually,
to give tax breaks, as Jim mentioned. They can save. They can give a break so the developer doesn't have to pay sales tax on all the stuff that they buy to build their project, so that they don't have to pay a mortgage recording tax when it comes time to record mortgages.
Lots of bennies.
It can be a way also to help promote a city, to help attract development to the city that would otherwise go to other cities that did have IDAs, that could offer tax breaks and various
That's
incentives.
one of the arguments in the agenda backup material about how many other cities have IDAs and why Plains doesn't, which is probably the most fruitful place to have one, because we are certainly in much better shape than any of the other cities in the county. And we all know that, don't we? Meanwhile,
well, I mean, Jim, if you know, back in the days when you were, into the development business, would you rather go to a city that had an IDA than one that did not?
I would say I probably would rather go to a city that had one.
There you go.
So now you've heard it.
Now you've heard it, right. Speaking now, I know, here's the segment you've been waiting for.
Uh-oh.
Trump, the president.
Okay, here we go again, folks. Donald Trump lost big in the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals in San Francisco when the court decided not to lift the stay, halting enforcement of Trump's travel ban. Significantly, it was a unanimous decision, nonpartisan. Marks the second time a Republican judge appointed by President Bush ruled against Trump's executive order. The other judges in the Ninth Circuit who ruled against Trump were appointed by Presidents Carter and Obama. The court ruling savaged Trump's executive order on virtually every point. Among other things, the government had argued that the country was at risk from terrorists, so long as the courts would not allow the executive order to be enforced and ban travel from some Muslim countries. Trump yesterday again vowed to continue fighting the decision in court, conveniently forgetting his own argument that the country isn't safe as long as his travel ban is not being enforced. So if Trump believed his own argument, he'd withdraw the questionable order and properly and carefully draft an executive order that will stand up and can go into effect right away to protect the country from the threat he claims exists. Instead, he's going to be fighting a protracted court battle, leaving the country unprotected, based on his own argument. Supreme Court Judge nominee Neil Gorsuch, made the rounds on Capitol Hill and told both Republican and Democratic senators that he finds President Trump's statements trying to discredit judges and the court system, an equal branch of government, an important part of the system of checks and balances created in part to keep presidents from becoming dictators, to be disheartening. And Trump denied that Gorsuch said what he said, but others confirmed that he did say it. One of those who confirmed was a White House aide who was charged with helping Gorsuch work his way through the confirmation process. Democratic Minority Leader Chuck Schumer suggested that Gorsuch's comments may just be play acting to help in his confirmation by making him appear more mainstream by fighting with Trump.
A very interesting theory.
President Trump's aide Kellyanne Conway apparently has violated government rules by promoting Donald Trump's daughter Ivanka Trump's line of fashions. Government employees like Conway are prohibited from endorsing and promoting commercial products. When she was on Fox and Friends on Fox News this week, Conway said she was going to do a free commercial for Ivanka's business and proceeded to hype the clothing, telling everyone to go out and buy some. By way of background, Nordstrom said it would no longer carry the Ivanka Trump clothing line because it wasn't selling well. Other stores were going to stop featuring the line. That caused Trump to attack Nordstrom. House Oversight Committee Chairman Jason Chaffetz, Republican of Utah, said Conway's comments were, quote, clearly over the line. White House Press Secretary Sean Spicer told a press briefing that Conway has been counseled on the matter. After avoiding reporters' questions at regular White House press briefings this week, Secretary Spicer sat down for a lengthy interview with, you ready for this, the radical right-wing website Breitbart, and that was televised. Former Senator Jeff Sessions from Alabama was sworn in as Attorney General. During the Senate debate leading up to a vote on confirming him, Senator Elizabeth Warren took the floor, and as part of her remarks started to read a letter written to the Senate by the widow of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. 2 decades ago when Sessions was up for federal judgeship. He was rejected for the judgeship. In the letter, Coretta Scott King pointed to Sessions' record as a racist while serving as Alabama's Attorney General. Republican leader Mitch McConnell interrupted Warren, forced her to stop speaking, and forced her to leave the Senate floor by invoking
disgrace.
An arcane rule of Senate procedure which prohibits one senator from disparaging another. There are plenty of examples where McConnell ignored the rule and did nothing when one senator really was disparaging another. Warren was banned from the Senate for the duration of the debate on Sessions. Later, and get this, several male Democratic senators read the Coretta Scott King letter into the record, and McConnell did not interrupt the male senators. Billionaire Betsy DeVos was confirmed as Secretary of Education. The Senate was equally divided on confirming her, 50-50. For the first time in history, the vice president had to be called in to break a tie on a cabinet nominee. To no one's surprise, Republican Vice President Mike Pence voted to confirm
And he also
Betsy DeVos.
And he also issued a statement defending it, which I thought was interesting.
The Washington Post reports that National Security Advisor Michael Flynn is changing his story about contacts with the Russians while President Obama was still in office. When interviewed by the Washington Post, Flynn denied discussing with the Russians the sanctions put into place against Russia by the Obama administration. The Trump administration was possibly going to remove those sanctions. Now a spokesman for Flynn has told the newspaper that Flynn retracts his denial and is changing his answer to, "I can't remember." Alabama Governor Bentley appointed Alabama Attorney General Luther Strange to fill Jeff Sessions' Senate seat. Strange has been investigating Bentley for a sex scandal and corruption in Alabama. He told Bentley that he wanted the Senate seat. The investigation is now in limbo, with Strange off to Washington. And Bentley now gets to pick a new Attorney General for Alabama, who is expected to be a friend of Bentley's and who could just plain stop the whole investigation.
No kidding.
Congressman Tom Price has been sworn in as Secretary of Health and Human Services. He's the guy who wants to do away with Medicare, Medicaid, and Social Security. Trump met with airline executives at the White House yesterday. He told them the system is a real mess, he said. It's really the safest and best in the world. The airlines and Republicans for years have wanted to privatize the air traffic control system. A new poll just released yesterday by the Aviation Alliance says 80% of Americans trust the FAA and trust the air traffic control system and don't want it privatized. This includes Trump voters. Jim, would you want your next flight to Florida to be kept safe and to be kept from hitting other airplanes and flying into thunderstorms by the lowest bidder and by controllers paid minimum wage? I ask you. You can't make this stuff up.
No, you can't. I mean, you can't make a mistake. And this new administration makes lots of mistakes. What have the mistakes been the last 3 weeks? Have we totaled them up? You know, we just have to total them up. They're amateurs. But
this executive order, it turns out, was drafted by a bunch of amateurs.
Definitely. Absolutely. We've not too much knowledge of the Constitution.
And the oral arguments in the case before the Ninth Circuit were broadcast, audio only, but it was broadcast for an hour the other night. A lot of people listened to it, including Donald Trump. Trump used it as an opportunity to again come down hard on judges and the court system. And we might point out, as we have in the past, that one of the things Hitler did early on was to cast doubts, to try to discredit the German court system. And in fact, he packed the court system with his own judges.
Right. And you couldn't be represented by a lawyer in front of those courts. Well, that being said, we would like to invite you all to the George Washington's birthday on February 26th, 1 to 3 p.m. There's shots of last year's, and you will hear a talk on Thomas Paine's conflicts with I think George Washington. Oh, yes, George Washington over the issues. So that's something to think about when you attend that.
I heard Thomas was being a real pain to George.
Yes, right. Well, he wrote Common Sense. And boy, we need some of that today, folks. John Bailey, Peter Katz, Jim Benerofe. Good night for White Plains Week.
This has been White Plains Week. News and commentary about White Plains, Westchester, and the world. The views and opinions expressed on this program were solely those of the participants. White Plains Week, produced by White Plains Citizen Net Reporter, and presented on Optimum Cable Channel 76 and Verizon Fios Channel 45. You may view White Plains Week anytime on the internet at whiteplainsweek.com, youtube.com, and wpcommunitymedia.org. For White Plains Week, this is Peter Katz.